Hi everyone, it's Austin from CNA Mastery Center, and today I want to share with you 5 tips that I wasn't expecting or I wish I knew before I became a nurse assistant. So why am I sharing this? Well, the CNA field is growing so much and it's an excellent career. It's a good stepping stone into other careers, and there's just so much involved when it comes to healthcare and working in the nursing team and working as a CNA that people just don't really expect before they get into it. So here's 5 tips that I wish I knew before I got into it. So the first one is going to be emotional resilience. And there will be a lot of emotional challenges that you deal with on any given day, especially depending on what area you decide to work in. I've worked in acute care settings, the hospital setting, all areas of the hospital as a float. I've worked in about 10 nursing homes. Each one brings with it its own emotional burden. At the end of the day, when you go home or when you're driving away, you think about, the things that you just seen or the things you just dealt with. So a couple things I want to talk about with the emotional resilience is that on your days off, you really want to utilize your self-care. On your breaks, you really want to just relax and take a moment to yourself. Try not to work through your breaks like what a lot of nurses do or CNAs do. Part of the CNA job role is that you may have to do post-mortem care. So if you're in a nursing home, that itself can bring upon a lot of emotional feelings, especially if you have older adults in your family. And in the hospital, you'll most likely have to deal with suffering and loss. And with that are not just the patients who are losing their lives, but the family who are also dealing with those patients. On many occasions, especially during COVID or on any other floors of the hospital, I've had to do post-mortem care. And right before the patient passed, a lot of the times the family will be there and they'll want the patient cleaned. You'll have to work under pressure as well, because as the patient is spending their last lives here, the family might be there in that moment and you may have to perform some type of duty. For example, one family, they wanted their mom just given a bath one more time. And it was also our policy to give a bath every day. But in that specific circumstance, it's an extremely humbling experience, but it also might take an emotional toll on you to give a bed bath to somebody who is experiencing their last day here alive. Along with that, having maybe 15 family members watch you while you do it. And how I've handled that is really just with a lot of self-care on my days off, doing things for you. Try not to overwork yourself with the burdens of the hospital or burdens of working overtime. Really spending time for yourself and regrouping on your days off, and especially during your breaks. So number 2 on the list is that there are physical demands. Now this could happen at any given moment, but the nature of the job is definitely physical. This will come in the form of things like lifting patients out of bed, walking patients to the bathroom, ambulating patients in the hallway, and all of a sudden their knees start to get wobbly and holding onto their gait belt. You may have to kind of hold them up. Hopefully you have a wheelchair with you. Turning patients, putting patients on the bedpan, running from room to room. There's been days where I've had 20,000 steps by the end of a 12-hour shift. It could be very tiring, especially if you're wearing an isolation gown like PPE, you're sweating. So there's definitely a physical demand to the job of being a CNA, and there's one way to get around it, and it's if you become a sitter or a patient safety technician. Oftentimes, patient safety technicians or safety coaches, they sit one-on-one with a patient. I personally get a little bored as a safety technician, but that's because I enjoy moving around. I like the more fast-paced environment. But especially if you're a student and you're continuing on in school, being a safety coach is definitely a good job. It allows you to be one-on-one with the patient. That usually can encompass something like a patient is on SI precautions because they have suicidal intentions, or maybe they are a little confused, they have dementia and they're pulling out their lines, or they're tugging at their trach. So they need somebody one-on-one with them to prevent them from causing harm to themselves or causing harm to others. So a part of this physical demand is also keeping yourself in good shape and expecting that if you're looking for a job in the hospital as a CNA or even in any of the nursing homes, you're going to be running around quite a bit. If you are thinking of becoming a CNA and maybe you're in CNA school right now, or you are already a CNA and you have to retake your state certification test coming up, there's a link below to CNA Mastery Center. We have 20 lessons that are at an accelerated pace. There's over 1,000 mock test questions and over 600 flashcards with definition explanations for all of the answers. So if you're about to take the CNA state nursing test anytime soon, I highly recommend the program that CNA Mastery Center has. It's a one-click, easy lesson by lesson. It goes everything from proper body mechanics to ethics and policy to handling emergency situations and having good communication skills with patients. So if you're interested, click the link below. Number 3 on the list is time management and organization. This is a very important role of being a CNA because you're dealing with oftentimes 8 to 12 patients. Depending on where you're working, things can get very busy. And I want to give you a little scenario of what might happen if you're going into the hospital or any nursing home. You show up, it's 7 o'clock, the night shift ended up getting a little bit busy and behind, and there are 3 patients that are calling, one with needing help to the restroom, one who has a rash on their arm, and another who wants a glass of water. It can be a little bit stressful because you just got in, you haven't really gotten. Topple that with them also maybe having family at the bedside, things get very rushed and you have to prioritize yourself. What is the most important right now? Which patient is most critical? Is there any safety on the line? Now, oftentimes you could do these things at the same time. For example, if you know that, if a patient asks you about some redness around the IV, you know that will probably be a question for the nurse, so you might want to get the nurse right away for that. But if there's another patient asking for water and then another asking for, the bathroom might be a little bit more critical, but also if you could do the water along the way. So these are just little time management skills that you end up teaching yourself and should definitely be expected if you're going into the CNA role. There are times where it will be very, very rushed and you will be very, very busy, and there will be multiple people calling you all at the same time. And another thing that has really helped me is that as soon as going into your shift, you want to get a piece of paper, write all your patients down, the time slots each hour for the day, and then chart and write down all of the priorities that you need to do throughout the day. This is really going to help you stay organized. Number 4 on the list is having good communication skills. Having good communication skills is a critical part of being a CNA. This is going to involve communicating sometimes with the doctor, especially with the nurse that you're working with, and also especially with patients and their family members and any visitors. And along with those skills, I want to highlight the importance of being an active listener, having empathy, and having clear communication. Because the way that you communicate with your nurse or with the doctor when he comes into the room is ultimately all for the patient's care. If you're emptying out their Foley bag and you notice some redness in the bag, which wasn't there before, you know that might be something critical and you might want to communicate that to the nurse right away. Or if you're in a patient's room and the family has questions and they expect you to know every single answer, there may be times where you're put into a situation where you have to communicate in a way that catches you off guard, and also know what you need to delegate to the nurse and what you can also answer yourself. Ultimately, this builds strong relationships and friendships with your coworkers and with the management of the hospital, and especially with the patients, because when the patients leave the hospital, they're going to get a survey, and the survey is going to ask them a lot of detailed questions. If they were offered a bed bath, how fast the healthcare team was responding to their requests, everything from a glass of water to when the nurse brings their medication, it all comes back in a survey, and all of that ultimately comes back to you. It really shouldn't dictate how we're treating our patients. We should be working efficiently and diligently just to provide good care for our patients, but know that everything you do is being watched and does ultimately come back to you. The last thing I want to touch upon communication is that when you're dealing with suffering of patients and especially death, family at the bedside is at their most critical time in their life. They're dealing with something that oftentimes maybe they haven't ever experienced before, and it could be a very, very touchy subject. Also, it could be a very emotional subject. There are times where it may emotionally affect you, or it may emotionally affect the family. One of the best things you could communicate is just your presence. Just being there with the patient or with the family. Sometimes just being a person, especially if there's just one person. Every situation is unique to itself, but it's something that I didn't really think about before I went into the CNA role, is that I didn't really think I would be dealing with it as much. And especially, during COVID, or if you work in a more critical area, these are things that you might have to deal with a little bit more. So number 5 on the list of things I wish I knew before I became a CNA. This one is not really something I wish I knew, but it's definitely one of the coolest things about being a CNA. And I wanted to add this in here because I think it's such a blessing and it's really a positive thing. There are diverse populations of people that you're going to be dealing with. And this has to do with everybody of all backgrounds and ages and cultures. So there's definitely a need for cultural sensitivity and understanding of healthcare for these backgrounds and cultures. Maybe they have a specific tradition because especially if you're living in a bigger city like Los Angeles or New York, or a culturally diverse city, you're going to experience people from all over the world who have all types of preferences, food preferences. So some things I've learned to adapt to this is to just be completely open-minded. If you're going into the nursing field, you have to go into work every day not knowing what you're going to expect. By the time you go in to the time you leave, you're going to be like, wow, I can't believe that happened today, or I can't believe I met this person. But again, dealing with diverse patient populations is such a rewarding aspect of being a CNA. And along with this, just know that when you're dealing with these patients, you're not just representing yourself, but you're representing really all of nursing, all of the CNAs. When they think of you, they're going to clump all of nursing itself into one thing. Sometimes patients are only in the hospital once or twice in their entire life, and you will be that one experience that they have in the hospital. Although it may seem like just a small encounter, that might dictate whether they want to go to the hospital next time they're feeling sick, they need to come some other time. Every little thing we do as a CNA or as a nurse really makes a big impact on these patients and their family members. So to sum it all up, the things we talked about: number 1, emotional resilience; number 2, physical demands; number 3, time management; number 4, communication skills; and number 5, diverse populations of people. So I would love for all of you to share your thoughts in the comments below and your own experience if you are a CNA already, or if you're thinking of becoming a CNA. Did any of these tips help you? Thank you so much. Comment down if you enjoyed this video. Hit the subscribe button and the like button. It would really help me out and help the channel out. So I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.